Thank you, Caitlin and Kate. Again, really compelling work and so comprehensive. And I also wanted to say we really appreciate the involvement of students in some of these projects. We are going to have a question and answer session for these two projects, which I will moderate. Are there microphones circulating? Yeah. Okay, great. While you all are thinking about possible questions, I'm just going to ask one for the commercially owned online spaces project. So, Kate, you and I have both sat on the IRB at JHSPH, and I was very intrigued by your conclusion that it would be more unethical not to conduct the research than it would be to lie about your characteristics in order to get onto the website. I understand the content of the conclusion. I'm curious about how you argue for it.
So I think to modify that just a little bit, I think that we see a tension that what is the legal thing to do may not be the ethical thing to do here. So we see this as a tension between what is legal and what is ethical. And I think it's also fair to say that we see these, and we were very careful in our sort of scoping of this, that this is a different issue if we were considering looking at interaction in these online spaces rather than the spaces themselves. So the research that we've limited ourselves to here is really research that's looking at the online environment rather than people's engagement with that environment. So it's not, from an IRB perspective, it's not human subjects research. It's actually research on the space itself. But I think this question of the relationships between legal and ethical has been sort of at the heart of what we've been struggling with over the past 2 years.
Excellent answer. So who has questions in the audience for either project? Yeah, Tony. Please also say your name and where you're from.
Sure. I'm Tony DeBora from the Information Security Institute. My question for the automotive authors is, if you look into your crystal ball, with all of these ethical issues that are emerging for autonomous vehicles, do you believe that the current structure of the federal government overseeing this industry, namely, I guess, the Department of Transportation, National Transportation Safety Board, do you think that they can just evolve as they stand, or will it require significant restructuring and creative thinking over time to be able to effectively address the industry in the future?
Okay. Thank you, Tony, for that question. So we've been thinking a lot about this. The short answer is that the current structure of the government cannot handle autonomous vehicles. No way. So we really have to figure out new ways to bring new levels of safety to this industry. And that's something that we're struggling with now. It's not an easy question to answer. So one possibility is what they've done in pharmaceuticals. So that's also a major industry and huge safety concerns. And one model we're looking at is it's called CITI. So it's housed at Duke University, and it's a public-private partnership between the FDA and all the major pharmaceuticals. And they pool all of their talent together to try to figure out what is the best way to test their products. So, and they make recommendations to the FDA. So that's one possible model that we were looking at. But we're certainly open to other suggestions, and we're going to be talking with people in the Birmingham Institute about this as well.
Did you want to add to that, Jonathan?
No, I think that was...
Yeah. Okay, great. Who's next? You have a question? Yeah, go ahead. I'm Suzanne. Please. Please say your name and where you're from.
Okay, my name is Tomogole Deititi from Birmingham Institute of Medicine. My question, or my concern, or my worry, I just don't understand why this testing for auto, why are they done in the black male neighborhood? What is the reason for doing that in the black neighborhood? Is there any reason for doing that?
So if I could restate the question to make sure I understood.
is why are they testing in the wealthier neighborhoods?
Yeah,
Or the-
black neighborhood.
and the black, why are they testing? Okay, so they're testing in the white neighborhoods. Just to clarify, the slides that we showed, it was very heavily skewed towards testing in the white neighborhoods, and we have. So it's an empirical question that we're trying to answer right now. One is that it could have something to do with where these companies are located themselves, so they would naturally just test in their immediate neighborhood of their vicinity. Possibly there's an innocent answer. Another could be that there is differences in the infrastructure. So these vehicles really work under ideal conditions. The lane markings have to be perfect. There should be no road work. The lights should work perfectly. All the signage should be right. The road user environment should be very predictable. So there shouldn't be many cyclists or pedestrians and so on. Or it should be fairly predictable. And so another reason could just be the infrastructure requirements. And so our current research, which we're pursuing now, is to take a sample of the roadways where crashes have occurred, remember the green dots, and use Google Street View so you can go into the road and you can use a roadway assessment tool to look at the quality of the infrastructure, the signage, the roadway markings. So we're going to do that where the crashes are occurring, where testing is occurring, and then we're going to take a matched sample in the same city where testing is not occurring and see if the infrastructure, the roadway markings, and so on are different. And if there's any differences, we'll quantify those. So we actually don't know the answer, frankly, but we're going to try and find out.
We really appreciate the question and your response to help clarify some of the issues of equity that are central to this problem space. Another question? Oh, I think we'll have time for these two more. Yours and then yours. Okay.
For the autonomous vehicles, did the NTSB explain why the aircraft manufacturers were sharing safety information? And if it was because of some legal reason, are they considering requiring auto manufacturers to do the same?
Oh, and could you please say your name and
I'm so
your
sorry.
affiliation?
Alyssa Eisenberg, the Center for Leadership Education in the Whiting School.
Okay, thank you for your question, Alyssa. So it's about in the airline industry, it's voluntary, but what they realized is exactly what Sebastian Frum did, stated, and that's that you can learn from each other's mistakes. And what they did is they actually keep the federal regulators out, and they monitor themselves. They do make mistakes, but they don't release them to the public. So that's their sort of this pact. That, because otherwise we would feel, yeah, anyway, so they keep it in-house. And, but they learn from mistakes, and they've, the record of airline fatalities went down drastically. So it was zero for a long time. And a lot of it is attributed to that effort. So NTSB, talking with the NTSB, and we're trying to figure out if we could do something similar to the automotive self-driving cars. It's really difficult. They're really resisting because it's an extremely competitive industry, and there's some differences from the airline industry, but we are really pushing that effort. And we believe that if they voluntarily pool their data and learn from each other's mistake, the entire industry would benefit. But somehow it's difficult to convince them.
Yeah, collective action problem, I suppose, of sorts, right? So we have one more question, and then may I also ask the speakers for the third presentation to come on up, please, and ask for some help to position the slides for the third presentation, please. Please say your name and where you're from.
My name is Isaac Mwase. I'm a local pastor. Concerning the autonomous vehicles, can you elaborate on your concern about the possibility of widening disparities and the declining quality of life for certain segments of society? What are you discovering, and where do you see that playing out?
transportation for all of us is a fundamental determinant of health. Your ability to get to your local doctor's appointment, to get to a place where you can exercise or buy fresh food and groceries, all of those things affect our health and our well-being. Your ability to get to your local church or your community where you feel a sense of fellowship and connection, all of those relate to your ability to get around. The industry and our collective challenge today is to ensure that autonomous vehicles are not expensive limousines for rich people that just drive around and chauffeur them around whenever they need. But they become a community resource that is available to all, accessible for all, and improves well-being for all. And so I think we have a choice right now about which direction this is going to go. And I think if you look among the businesses themselves, they're positioning themselves in different markets. There are some car makers who are positioning these as personal use vehicles, whereas others are really promoting the shared use model. And so I think our role here at the university, but particularly from an ethical and equity perspective, is to really advocate strongly that these vehicles should be shared. Ideally, they should be also electrified, so that the quality of the air doesn't decrease as more and more vehicles are on the road.
Terrific. I am sorry that I have to bring this Q&A to a close, but boy, did we cover a lot of important ground there. Thank you so much. And everybody, you can mingle with the presenters at the break and at the reception afterwards. Thank you so much.